For those that don't know NetApp, we've been around for, as I said, since 1992. Very big company, over 38,000 customers. I think the key thing from this slide is not all the kind of this and that, it's the top left part. It's the fact that we're still in the primary quadrant at the top right for primary storage. We're in the quadrants for cloud optimization now and resource optimization. But uniquely, amongst all of the kind of data management and storage vendors that are out there, we're actually first-person sold by all of the hyperscalers. So you can go into Azure, into AWS, into Google, and buy NetApp technology, not from NetApp, but from the hyperscaler themselves. And it's really just a kind of a reflection, I suppose, of the maturity of the data management solutions that NetApp bring to the market, that the hyperscalers are reselling those products themselves within their own ecosystems. So a very interesting kind of point to note. So as a company, in highlights, what I wanted to do with the next few slides is just really show you the kind of markets and the areas that NetApp is in. Because I think if you're a NetApp customer, you've known us probably for many years. But for those of you that aren't NetApp customers, NetApp have been and have come from very much the enterprise storage arena, if you like. That was our bread and butter when we started in 1992. But we extended from just doing data storage in all its different flavors through to doing object storage, moving into doing private cloud stacks with Cisco, for example, with UCS, Nexus, and NetApp, and then moving into layering data protection and security and enterprise integration capabilities around those products so that you could install on those storage systems your enterprise VMware, your Oracle, your Exchange in the day, but equally now your SAP applications, your NVIDIA and AI learning, etc. So NetApp has a very wide portfolio that's really delivered for that. And actually some of our customers there, ZSL, the Zoological Society of London, they use our flash storage for all their ticketing engines. Icon, who are a pharmaceutical research company, they use our object storage for storing all the collaboration data on the research which they do. And a very interesting company, if you've not come across them, Cambridge Consultants, they're actually a think tank. Customers go to them and say, I want to do something crazy. And they come up with the ideas that are crazy. And then they wet lab it, they build it, they proof of concept it. But a lot of that is built around using AI. And the platforms they use for developing that AI is built on NetApp technology to provide the performance and the low latency that they need in that type of environment. So NetApp as a company have very much come from that side of the equation. And if you know us, that's probably what you know us for. Where we've differentiated ourselves in probably about the last 7 years was we made a decision to take our capabilities into the public cloud space. We saw those kind of markets opening up, and we saw them as both competitors and friends. We could either lose to them, or we could actually hop onto the capabilities they were offering and use that to extend our capabilities out to customers as they went on a cloud journey. And the first thing we actually launched was putting cloud data storage into the hyperscaler on top of the disks and compute which they offered. So bringing NetApp's data management value into those spaces on top of those environments. Then we moved into cost optimization in the cloud. Put it this way, the cloud is expensive. If you do a TCO argument for almost probably about 80% of the cases, it will work out more expensive to put things in the cloud. But you gain agility, you gain time to market, you gain all the things that you couldn't have done if you deployed in your own data center. So there's a lot of benefit for using the cloud. But NetApp can help you actually reduce the cost of that cloud journey quite significantly so that you can do more in the cloud for less cost. The other challenge that is out there, as Lee mentioned, is around about cyber resilience, cyber security. It's becoming one of sustainability and cyber resilience are probably the two topics of the year, if you like. NetApp are very much focused on providing not just enhancing cloud security and recoverability and security, etc., but taking that capability back into the data center as well. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that we can do. And then we offer a range of other cloud services around about helping you deploy things like Kubernetes at scale, helping you deploy virtual desktops in the cloud at scale. A lot of different things all around about making your journey to cloud much easier. And we've got a lot of customers that are deploying. We have actually over 3,000 customers in the cloud on NetApp already. And a few examples here, Clavis Insight, they're a retail analytics company, and they use NetApp storage in the cloud because they were a cloud native company that grew dramatically, so much so that the cost of the cloud was inhibiting their business. So they came to NetApp, we deployed our cloud storage offering, Cloud Volumes ONTAP, and we reduced the cost of that cloud environment significantly and actually made that journey much easier and cost effective for them. Ticketmaster, who I'm sure you've heard about in the news recently actually, Ticketmaster build their Kubernetes containerized ticketing platform in the cloud. That's how they get the scale to deal with all the ticket demands, etc. Well, the challenge they actually have is the cost of the compute that runs that Ticketmaster engine, because you can imagine how expensive it is. How do they provision? How do they cope with peaks and troughs, etc.? How do they have the infrastructure as a service in place to meet the container loads and requirements that come? It's very hard to do, and it's incredibly hard to do cost effectively, because how often do you go back and optimize that? So NetApp technology integrates into their container engine and automatically scales up and scales down the infrastructure as a service that delivers that container engine. And they took 65% of the cost of their ticketing engine out by using NetApp technology to help them manage that growth, the bust and boom cycles which they have. And then a final customer of ours in the cloud is Siemens. You've probably heard of, massive company. This actually is the rail division. Siemens Rail do an IoT platform, which they then sell to customers as a SaaS offering for customers to manage their rail infrastructure, all the kind of signals, the points, all the assets that sit out there in a railway network. That SaaS platform is not built on NetApp in the cloud, but it's secured by NetApp in the cloud. So we help them deliver a secure platform that means that their customers can use that SaaS offering. So when you look at what NetApp are doing in the cloud, we're really extending the data center value that we have and taking that from the data center, but building the same capabilities and options into the cloud as well. And really NetApp's strategy today, uniquely, is about enabling you to deliver data management, which is the hard part, if you like, for you to then build your applications on top of, but to do that consistently in a standardized way across both the data center and the cloud. And both Coca-Cola, AstraZeneca, Reach, who publish the Daily Express and hundreds of other newspapers and digital platforms, they've all done this. They've standardized their hybrid multi-cloud platform, their data management platform, on NetApp using our technologies to help them do that. So we have a range of capabilities. Most people will say, yeah, I know you for NAS or SAN. That's down that one icon at the left-hand side. We really now have opened up a whole range of capabilities that can extend what we can offer and bring to you in terms of what you're trying to do as a business. So I think the first thing that we do, and this is the piece that I said most people will know us for, is the fact that we do deliver data center storage products. You're probably well aware of those if you're a customer of ours. As I said before, we do private cloud, we do object storage, we do what I call enterprise JBOD, the E-series platform. OEM, there's over 1 million units of that deployed globally. It was OEM by Dell, Cray, SGI, Teradata, a whole range of vendors have built platforms on top of the E-series platform. It is just fast, reliable disk. And we also have software defined our offering. And actually, that software definition of our offering is what has allowed us to take the data management that we do in the data center and move it into the cloud. Because it was software defined, it was easy to put on top of somebody else's hardware as such. The key thing about these platforms is not the fact that they're great storage platforms, enterprise capable, etc. It's the fact that they are all cloud connected. And this is the important part about building a journey to cloud. If you're looking at building a hybrid infrastructure where you want to leverage and build applications both in your data center, but also in the public clouds, how do you actually do that without reinventing the wheel, creating silos, having to do different procedures, processes, skills, etc.? And that's where NetApp products come into play. So for example, the ONTAP products we have, they can cloud backup to the cloud. So you can literally just click, point at an S3 bucket, and the system will back itself up into the cloud with a catalog to recover data from. Actually, the company there, you can guess which global CRM SaaS company that is. I won't name them, maybe the blue cloud minus the white writing is a little bit of a clue. But they do that. They back up their systems into the cloud, into S3, using NetApp's cloud backup capability. And that's about extending the data center. That's about taking what would be a traditionally on-premise product and starting to push parts of it to the cloud. Backup being one of the easy parts, if you like, or easier. Another company you probably heard of, the Ivy League, who manage a lot of the universities in the US, they tier to the cloud. So they have hundreds of terabytes of data in their data centers. That's on hot, expensive disk. They use our cloud tiering capability to connect that product to S3 repositories in the cloud. You can actually do it on-premise as well, but they actually tier to the cloud. So that means all of that cold data is transparently tiered into the cloud, meaning they don't have to manage it in their data centers. They don't have to power, cool it. It's a great sustainability play because you can actually offload a lot of that power, cooling, space, etc., of the data that you're least likely to use into the cloud, but it's all managed transparently for you. And another technology, and this really is where we start to build a proper hybrid model, is the ability to replicate on-premise platforms into cloud platforms, or vice versa, cloud to on-premise, cloud to cloud, etc. And our SnapMirror technology, which Reach use, enabled them to go from an on-premise NetApp solution to AWS, and then for DR, and they've been so successful with that, they're now moving fully into AWS and actually building their whole production platform in AWS, but on top of NetApp's AWS FSx platform, so our storage platform in the cloud. So we've retained that customer as they've gone on their journey through to the cloud. They started that about 4 or 5 years ago, so they've been well advanced in the maturity of how they got there. So very interesting in the sense of what we do in the data center today enables you to bridge to the cloud, enables you to adopt the cloud as you want to, and almost as a kind of a staged capability, whether it's tiering or backup or replication. We do it in the edge as well. You know, we don't just do big data center systems. We do small 2U arrays if you've got lots of edge sites. We even do software-defined versions of our primary storage operating system, ONTAP, which you can deploy on top of VMware. So if you have a remote site where you run VMware as the service, where, you know, for your authentication, your print services, your applications, you can put NetApp on as a software-defined storage solution and use all the enterprise capabilities that we offer in the data center at the edge of your network as well. So it's about extending the reach of a consistency of data management. And if you actually have remote offices where you don't even really put much of a presence at all, we can do edge caching out to those offices. There's a global architects firm who've designed most of the big bridges around the world. They have lots of offices around the sun. They use our caching product to bring all of those users back to a centralized data source. So they actually host all their CAD/CAM documents, big, massive 4 gig, 8 gig, and larger files in their central office, and they use the caching to enable around the sun working philosophy where people can do the design changes in Australia but access the data set that sits in the UK, and that enables them to deliver a distributed environment where they have a kind of an edge core type of model. So we're really pushing technologies into that space as well. I suppose when I think about NetApp and somebody says to me, okay, NetApp, you're a data management storage vendor, I get that. What's unique about NetApp? The key thing I think that is unique about NetApp is the fact we take all of this value into all of the public clouds as well. It's not about just building in the data center, because nobody is just building in the, well, actually, I did talk to a missile defense manufacturer. They were just building in the data center, but everybody else is looking at the cloud. They're extending their reach. How can they adopt the cloud? How can they leverage the cloud? How can you take that agility or whatever reason it is that you want to go there? NetApp enable you to do that. The capabilities we bring is actually taking, oops, excuse the odd icon there, taking our ONTAP operating system into all of these locations. It runs on all of those devices on premise and the data center at the edge, but it also runs in all of the public clouds as well. And it's this differentiator, that ability for you to standardize data management, whether it's backup, recovery, business continuity, automation, whatever you're looking to do, across multiple environments, across the hybrid multi-cloud, that really enables you to do much more with NetApp than you would do if you were building bespoke siloed solutions in each of these environments. Somebody actually said to me, I was talking to somebody and they said, our problem now with the cloud is that we have multiple clouds. They built themselves multiple silos in the cloud as they had silos in the data center. They said, what we really want to do is to be multi-hybrid cloud. We want to be able to leverage these environments with a consistency across them. And that's what ONTAP and NetApp's ability to offer that actually enables you to do. ONTAP, and I'm not going to go through the feature set, delivers all the enterprise data management features that you'd expect, replication, asynchronous, synchronous, snapshots, storage efficiencies, zero space clones, etc. All of this, with SAN and NAS protocols, etc. That's great, but the capability and the offering of being able to do that across the clouds as well as on-premise is what makes NetApp unique. And we can deliver ONTAP in AWS, GCP, Azure as a managed service. And what we mean by that is the hyperscaler owns it. They'll sell it to you. It's through their portals. It's fully API integrated. You can leverage ONTAP's goodness in all of those clouds using those services. Or you can actually deploy effectively a storage virtual machine, your own version of ONTAP, which you'd be familiar with if you came from the data center in the public cloud as well. The key thing here is it's ONTAP across the board. It's the same skills, the same backup, the same replication, the same efficiencies, the same encryption, security, all the things that come with ONTAP. It's the same across all of these environments. And actually, we just recently added VMware Cloud into that. So AWS and VMware allow you to connect ONTAP as a native data store into VMC. So if you're moving VMware into the cloud, it can be a data store underneath that. And actually AVS, the Azure VMware service, they've just gone GA with the same capability, and Google's expected to follow relatively soon. So NetApp is available really as a standardized data management platform across the multiple and multi-hybrid clouds that you might deploy into. And that is about standardization, about consistency, about breaking down the silos and the barriers that we would have had otherwise in the past. So this slide's great. All the features of ONTAP, I'm going to go into it. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave that slide for you later. You can look at it at your leisure. It's all the protocols, options, and things that we do. The key thing with this is that what it enables is, and if you're familiar with this, on site you build networking, storage servers, virtualization OS, etc. As you go into the cloud, you do the same thing, but your level of responsibility is less as you go into each of these environments. What NetApp enables you to do is enable that data management to be consistent across these. And that's really where the value of ONTAP starts to come into play. You're not building siloed environments as you move forwards. And we've had various new features come into ONTAP. We've had this release came with 9.12 came with tamper-proof snapshots. So the ability to lock a snapshot and immutably lock it until the time period has been reached. That's about ransomware protection. That's about even your admins not being able to damage the backups that you've put in place. We've added various other things. Oh, they're popping in it. My slide is not working today. There we go. So we've added in the latest release as well things like file-object duality. You can run NAS protocols on NetApp, object protocols, and you can access the same data through either S3 or NFS or SMB. So that type of duality, as we call it, enables you to build multiple data environments where the customer use case for each of those files is different, but the data is the same. So that duality opens up a load of possibilities. We added things like a ransomware one-click extension blocking. If you suddenly discover a new ransomware extension that is causing damage in your environment, you can just one-click and ONTAP will block it across all of the file shares that are available. We added things like, in this release, zero trust for logging, authentication, auditing, etc. It's not just now enough to lock people out when they try to damage your system. You actually need to make sure they aren't tampering with your audit logs as well, or your logging capabilities, because so much more these attack vectors are becoming that much more complex and hard. And for those that are really interested in, and that's lost its way, that should say NVMe cluster size increase. It's got an eye in front there. We've also extended our capabilities with the latest disk technologies and made bigger clusters with the latest high-performance disks. The key thing about ONTAP is not all of the nice bells and whistles, which are great. It's about the fact you can deliver them into all of these environments at the top. You can put them into colo locations. You can actually buy it through Equinix as a consumption service. You can put it into your data center, AWS, Azure, Google. You can natively plug it into Kubernetes as well. So it becomes a data layer effectively that becomes effectively a standardized way of managing your data, irrespective of what you're trying to do and in which environment you're trying to do it. But that's not the only place that we actually play in nowadays. A lot of customers are really focused on cost, which has always been a challenge, let's face it. But before, it was always about cost management in the data center. How do we optimize what we're using? And don't get me wrong, we had things like VMware came in, enabled you to optimize the compute. We had storage efficiencies which came in at the disk layer, which meant that you could store more data on less tin. So all of those things have been available in the data center for years. The challenge is how do you take those into the public cloud? NetApp enables you to do that. We can do deduplication and compression in AWS, in Azure and Google and help you reduce your cloud bill. But we can also, as I mentioned before, do cold tiering to object storage, which reduces that primary storage use and reduces the cost of storing data. Because data storage and transparently and automatically managing that data storage is one of the challenges that we have. The other piece that I mentioned before is around about compute optimization in the cloud. How do I actually reduce the cost of the infrastructure as a service, the container platforms, the big data platforms that I'm deploying in the cloud? So if you're using instances from Amazon, you're using Kubernetes in the cloud, you're using Apache Spark in the cloud, NetApp Spot service will analyze all of those environments and then help you continuously optimize the compute utilization to match the application's actual utilization. And that capability means that you can tightly couple the cost to your actual requirement rather than the usual scenario, which is, well, I'll provision the biggest instance available, I underuse it, but I'm still paying the cloud provider for it. So this technology helps you automatically manage these two things together and actually optimize the cost as you go forwards. So a lot of capabilities there, which I'm not going to go into the detail of. We also added the ability to help you understand your cloud billing process. Does anybody use the cloud here? Probably lots of hands. Does anybody understand the cloud billing process? Yeah, not as many hands probably, but the cloud billing is one of the hardest things to understand because firstly, AWS do it differently from Azure, do it differently from GCP, so you've got no standardization across that. How do you actually get a granular understanding, a way of optimizing and continually optimizing the cost that you have? Well, NetApp's Cloud Checker platform lets you do that. It was an acquisition we made that really tied in not just the spot part, which is this part, which is about optimizing and continuously optimizing compute. This part was about helping you understand the billing process, helping you get the best out of your bills, work out where you're overpaying, where you're underpaying. It's actually used very widely by service providers because they absolutely want to take every last nickel and dime out of the costs that they then charge onto their customers. And Cloud Checker enables them to do that. They get that optimization process. So a lot of technologies that NetApp offer. So when you're thinking about NetApp for disk and storage on premise, we're actually moving much more into helping you do the same thing but in cloud. But then when you look at the enterprise requirements in cloud, how do you do these things and how do you bring that in? And that's where a lot of these products come to play. Security and compliance is the next area which we put a lot of focus on. You know, we've always had ONTAP, which has things like FIPS 140-2 compliance. It's certified with the Department of Defense in the US. A lot of very heavy security credentials, which are really important for what we're doing in the data center. But actually, there's more to security and compliance than just the disks, if you like, the technology, the data storage that sits underneath. NetApp can actually help you do a variety of things now around about those environments that aren't just focused on NetApp, but are focused on all of the data that you store, whether it's on NetApp, EMC, AWS, Azure, doesn't really matter. Our Cloud Data Sense product is a SaaS tool that you can point at all of your data, so all your NFS shares, your SMB, all your S3 objects, all your Oracle databases, all your SQL servers, all your OneDrives, your Google Drives, your SharePoints, I'm trying to think of the list too, all the things that have got. It can look at all of these different data repositories and then track them in near real time. And what it does is it enables you to firstly look at all of that data and actually classify it. So it will go out and classify the data for you. It'll say this is confidential, this contains customer names, this contains references to race or something else that might cause you a problem. It will do a whole raft of discovery and classification. And with that classification, it then enables you to enact policy tracking, to regulation tracking. So you might say, I need to track PCI across different environments, which is a credit card regulation about ensuring that data that contains credit cards is encrypted. This will track that for you. It will track GDPR requirements. It will tell you when your data is being dropped into non-sovereign environments. It enables you, literally with a search engine, to type somebody's name in, and it will build you a DSAR report across all of those environments that it scanned. Most customers I talk to, that process takes weeks. Each department has to provide the information back. Somebody has to collate it. DataSense enables you to build those DSAR reports in literally minutes and at the click of a button. But it will also do more than that. It will look at the permissions that sit across that data, and it will show you where you've got permissions that have opened up that data to the wider world. It will also enable you to look at not just the data from a data perspective, as in what's in the data, but it will look at the metadata. It will tell you where you've got data that's not been used, that's cold. Maybe you want to optimize data sets before you go to the cloud. So Cloud Data Sense is really an all-encompassing engine to help you understand the data that you've got, not the infrastructure, but the data that sits on top of that infrastructure. If you're worried about ransomware, we have a range of technologies that can help you protect against that. Ransomware, if one vendor tells you they can cure ransomware for you, they're lying probably. It's a layered effect. You need firewalls, you need disk technologies, you need technologies looking at what your users are doing, you need auditing capabilities, you need a whole raft of things. What NetApp offer here are a few different factors. The first is, through our Cloud Insights product, is we can actually track what your users are doing at the authentication level. So user X has opened up files A, B, C, D, E, Monday to Friday. Sunday, they come in and open up 1,000 files. Well, that's not usual behavior for that user. Cloud Insights will detect that, flag it up, create a snapshot, inform your admins, lock that user out. So you can actually build an environment that does user anomaly checking, as well as all the other factors that you may be building around ransomware. ONTAP itself has data encryption built in with off-box key management, which is great if you're in the cloud as well, because you can own your own encryption outside of the cloud. It will do secure multi-tenancy if you want to partition data storage. It will do multi-factor authentication, which everybody has, but it also does multi-admin authentication. I think of that as the nuclear 2 keys option. You need 2 admins to be able to delete a volume. That type of security means that you're not going to get into a scenario where somebody just accidentally clicks the wrong button and deletes a volume. They have to have done it with 2 admins. So they're either having a really bad day or you've got other problems to worry about. The other thing that ONTAP can do as well, this is all built into the storage layer on-premise and the cloud, is the ability to do immutable worm locking of files, of snapshots. And that type of capability means that you can start to build that into a process that even ransomware can't circumvent. Because if a file has been locked with a 7-year retention policy, that file cannot be deleted by anybody. The admin, the user, you'd have to trash the whole physical array to be able to actually delete that data. So it adds a layer of protection around about the data that you store. And then the final thing that NetApp offer is in the public clouds. How many of you are cloud experts at security? Everybody know that I am, their access controls, all that kind of stuff. It scares me, but Jesus, I'm glad I don't put my personal data in the cloud because I wouldn't know how to protect it. Cloud security is aimed at helping you manage that. It looks at all the configuration settings you've done in the cloud, all the security settings that you've applied, all of those things that you're kind of thinking, well, maybe that's the right option, maybe it's not. And it tells you where you're going right and wrong. And it gives you a dashboard to be able to see when you've made configuration changes in the cloud that are going to affect the security of your data. So it's a very capable platform at actually helping you be much stronger in the cloud itself. Anybody, actually, it's an interesting question. Anybody using Kubernetes in production here out of interest? I always wonder how many people are actually using Kubernetes. We get even one hand? Oh, we're all still sitting there in the virtualization layer, which is good, but it is changing. When I talk to large customers, they are starting to develop in Kubernetes. I think mostly because if you're trying to build an application at scale, you need something like Kubernetes. There's no other way to do it. If you want to build in the cloud and not overpay on cost, you're going to have to start looking at Kubernetes and those types of application environments to do it because there's no other way to be able to do it successfully. NetApp has integration into Kubernetes, so we can actually plug in as a storage provider, meaning that we can offer standardized persistent storage to containers, whether that's on-premise or in any of the public clouds. Again, it's about standardizing that data layer, irrespective of where you're building your applications, whether you're using OpenShift on-premise, EKS, AKS, GKE, whatever it is. And what we can build into that Kubernetes layer is we can build backup, business continuity, disaster recovery, replication, mobility of data, etc. All of that is built through our Astra platform in the public clouds. As regards automation on-premise, NetApp and ONTAP have had a very capable automation capability from day one. We've always had APIs across all of our products. Those are now standardized HTTP REST interfaces, so very much the latest in terms of what you need. But we also integrate fully into things like Ansible, Terraform, Puppet, Chef, whatever you choose as an automation layer, you can integrate into NetApp. And that integration is not just the data platforms which are on-premise, but on the cloud platforms as well. That's again about being able to standardize this layer of capability and control across those environments. So automation, management, now we're starting to get to a couple of different areas here. The first is actually how do you manage NetApp today? And NetApp still has all the same management tools. How many people have got NetApp, by the way? Just a rough show of hands. Okay, so you're familiar with Unified Manager, System Manager. You've been with NetApp for a long time. FileView was before even all of those, so I'm showing my age, obviously. We still have those capabilities. Those capabilities, for example, System Manager is now built into our cloud storage offerings as well. So you can deploy NetApp in the cloud in AWS and click on it and get a System Manager interface to be able to manage it. What that means is if you're used to managing NetApp in the data center, the same management tools work across the cloud versions as well. So that extends that consistency of data management. As I mentioned, on-premises, the cloud, there's a lot of AI knowledge and capability built into the platforms to tell you when you're doing things wrong, risk, etc. that's happening. The thing we launched recently is something called Blue XP. Did anybody hear about that launch? We've had a few laughs internally as to other things you could think of when you think of Blue XP, but marketing chose the product name, so we just have to go with it. I'll talk about that in a second. But the other area that we do management is not just NetApp management. Cloud Insights, which I briefly mentioned earlier, can actually manage across any vendor's technology. So if you've got HP, IBM Pure, you've got Hyper-V, VMware, you've got Kubernetes, you've got servers, you've got Brocade Fabrics, Cisco Fabrics, you've got networking, you've got containerized platforms on top, Cloud Insights will capture all the information from all of that passively and then build you a topology. And with that topology, it then shows you capacity trending, performance optimization, performance issues, risk analysis, chargeback, showback, billing, all of those things that you might want to do. Cloud Insights is designed as a multi-cloud, and that includes on-premise, infrastructure management tool. It looks across anybody's infrastructure, cloud infrastructure as well, pulls it all together, and then enables you to do operational, financial, and management control across those different platforms. It actually integrates also into ServiceNow to drive automation, which is something actually we use internally. And then the final piece of management that we've got is something called Spot PC. If you're deploying Azure virtual desktops, they are typically and have been very hard to manage. A lot of PowerShell used to be involved. It's getting less, but it's still quite tricky. Spot PC is a SaaS platform that enables you to manage the deployment, security, data management, Office 365, etc. Everything that goes into a virtual desktop all can be delivered through Spot PC. So it takes all of that challenge out of managing Azure virtual desktops. So this is the NetApp portfolio of today. I'm not going to go into it because we just have. It's really about our traditional on-premise platforms, our kind of cloud storage platforms, the management layers that sit across, the cloud connectivity that we talked about, and the cloud offerings that we have. That really is where NetApp is today, if you like. That's the portfolio offering that we have. What we launched was something called BlueXP, which was a way of bringing hybrid multi-cloud management that standardizes across any platform that NetApp deployed. So what I mean by that is that if you wanted to manage ONTAP on-premise, you'd use System Manager, Unified Manager. You'd go through those tools to do it. If you wanted to manage cloud volumes ONTAP in the cloud, you would go through Cloud Manager, for example. If you wanted to use ANF, which is the Azure NetApp files in Azure, you'd go through Azure's portal, for example, to manage it. What BlueXP is it brings all of that management under a standardized interface so that you don't have to go looking for how do I manage this, how do I manage that. BlueXP will enable you to launch into any of those products to manage them. But what's important is it brings an API that sits underneath all of them so that you can start to build standardized authentication across those platforms and also standardized management as well. So it's really about trying to drive simplicity in those products. The Spot portfolio, which is the cloud operations piece, also has its own interface, but these two together are actually connected with a single API layer that connects them together from both automation perspective, but also from authentication and security as well. So when you hear BlueXP, that's what the product is. It's a way of bringing all of NetApp's management together. Don't worry about that. It's a free tool. It's just available. If you have a NetApp product today, you can actually go to cloud.netapp.com and you'll be launched straight into BlueXP. BlueXP will then discover, click of a button, all your on-premise storage controllers. But actually, it used to just discover your ONTAP ones when it was Cloud Manager. It now discovers your E-Series, your object platforms. So all of those can be pulled together into a single management interface. When you've got that, you can also then click and add your cloud products. But the important thing about the framework is it enables you to add other products into that. You can kick on Cloud Insights, you can add security, you can add ransomware protection easily through one portal. So it's very much about helping us and helping you standardize the management of the NetApp platforms. So I'm going to stop there and ask if, I've got time. I think that's actually probably bang on time, is it? Or I've got 5 minutes, okay. Any questions? If I zip all the way back to where NetApp is at the very beginning. There we go. Any questions on what I've covered? I realize I've given you a tour de force of everything that NetApp does, which is often hard to take in 45 minutes. I'm around, so afterwards, so if you've got any questions, please do ask, grab me for a coffee, ask me, what's that feature you said? How do we do that? One of the things that Lee will provide at the end is they're providing a list of links and ability to have follow-up sessions on most of the technologies that I've covered today. So if you want to have a deeper dive on any of the things that I've talked about, just let SNS know, and then we can do that very easily for you. So I'd like to say thank you very much. Thank you.